Hello, Math 2 students. Today I'm going to be talking about the red bird. This is a different example from your actual project, so I suggest you grab either a piece of paper or a notebook so that you can take notes and follow along. So we're going to be analyzing the red bird. So it says that the red bird starts from his point 6, 0. So if you have a highlighter, you definitely want to highlight important information that you're given. His flight path reaches a maximum height of 22 yards and lands at the point 26. Okay, so when you are doing your project, you definitely want to look at the given information. So the given information, we can see that it starts at 6. So starts at point 6, 0, and then he ends at point 26, 0. Also, another piece of information is that he reaches a max height of 22 yards. This means that this is the highest the red bird is going to reach in your graph. So the very next thing that I want you guys to do is to create a graph. So this is going to be the section on how to find your vertex. But we need to create our graph. So create a graph using the given information. So I'm just going to draw a small graph. Doesn't have to be big, as long as you get the point. Now let's talk about this. So I am only doing the first quadrant of the graph because, so this is the first quadrant. For those that don't know, this is the second quadrant. This is the third. And this is the fourth. The reason why I am explaining this is because the red bird cannot fly in a negative direction. So notice how the x values here are positive and then the y values here are positives. Versus if we look at the second quad, the x values are negative and then your y values are positive, meaning that your red bird cannot fly in a negative direction. So that's why I only drew the first quadrant. So hopefully you guys can see that. We don't need this part, so just wanted to explain it really quick. Let's go back and continue with our graph. So just estimate first point starts at 6 and he ends at 26. That's the point that he ends, and then he reaches the max height at 22 yards. So somewhere in between here, that's the highest that the red bird can go. Let's try that again. Okay, so this is our graph. Notice x-intercepts, which is question number, let me go check, Question number 2, the zeros. The zeros mean x-intercepts. So if you look at your graph, notice how this is the x-axis, this is the y-axis. I already have 2 points. That's what's given information. So you could already fill that in for question number 2. So side note, let's do it in pink. So question number 2 on your red Angry Birds, you should already have your x-intercepts. That was given to you from the beginning. So this is all you have to do is fill it in. Also, question number 3, that's also given information. Maximum height, it is at 22 yards. So this is already given information that you could fill out your slide. Again, my question is different than your question. All right, so now that we created our graph, we can go ahead and move on to find our vertex point. So let's walk you through it. The very first thing that you should do when finding the vertex, especially when you're only given a graph, is to find the distance. That's the step number 1. So to find the distance, I'm going to go ahead and take a look here. To find the distance, we want to see where our graph starts to where it ends. So I see that it starts at 6, ends at 26. So to find the distance, we are going to subtract 26 minus 6, and you should get 20 as your distance. And this is already question number 5. So for question number 5, when it tells you what is the distance, you should put 20. Next, number 2. So this is still trying to find the vertex, but we're breaking it down. The next step that I want you guys to do is to find the middle of the graph. Okay, so I'm going to erase this right here. So what it's talking about is they want you to calculate what is the x value of a graph here. That's what we're trying to find, because that's going to give us our axis of symmetry and our vertex as well. So let's go ahead and find the middle of the graph by using the information in the distance. So we already know that the distance between 0.6 and 26 is 20 spaces. To find the middle, all you have to do, so since the distance is 20, I'm going to divide 20 by 2, and you should get 10. So when looking back at our graph, you will notice that the middle should have 10 spaces from where it starts and then 10 spaces from where it ends. Now we can go ahead and find the third step. So we're going to find the vertex by using step 2. So again, step 2 is, so that number 10 is the spaces from the middle. So spaces from the middle. So the easiest way that I can double check that the number is correct from the vertex is to start at the starting point, which is 6, and at the spaces, the amount of spaces, which is 16. So that's 6 plus 10, that's the spaces. And then to double check if 16 is our middle number, we're going to take the end point, which is 26, and subtract it by 10. Does that give you 16? It checks off. So 16 is going to be the middle of the graph. So that is our x value, the middle point. So we can already start looking at our vertex because we already know what that x value is at, which is 16, 22. So that is our vertex point. So you can already see that question number 1, which is the vertex point, is 16, 22. That is the vertex point. Let's go ahead and see how we can find our vertex, sorry, not our vertex, our axis of symmetry. So from the notes, I put that you can find the axis of symmetry 2 ways. And I like to shorten, well, most teachers shorten axis of symmetry by labeling it AOS. So this is going to be question number 4, but let's go through it. There's 2 ways you can find axis of symmetry. The first way is going to be using the vertex point. In a quadratic graph, you can look at the axis of symmetry, which is the middle of the graph, but you can also look at it if you know the vertex point, which in this case it's 16, 22. The axis of symmetry is the x value of the point, which is x. So the axis of symmetry is x equals 16. So if you are on question number 4, you can already see the axis of symmetry is x equals 16. Now, the second way that you can also do it is using your graph. So use graph. Again, I'm just going to draw a quick graph. Doesn't have to be perfect. As long as you know that height is 22. Your x-intercepts, let me scroll a little bit upward, 26, and then somewhere up here is your vertex point. Since we already found the middle of the graph, which is 16, by adding the spaces to the starting point and then subtracting 26 from 10, the 10 spaces from the middle, we saw that the middle is 16. So x equals 16. It's just the x value. That's the axis of symmetry. So this is the first, these are the 2 ways that you can find axis of symmetry, either vertex point or using the graph. So once you find this, you can already fill in your slide on the red bird. Again, my question is different than your question. To find domain and range, so problem 6 and 7, we need to find the value of a, and then we need to find the equation for 9, and then screenshot our graph. So I'm going to do a separate video on how to graph your equation on Desmos and how to insert it on your Google Slides. So first page is questions number 1 through 5. Let's go ahead and talk about domain and range. So I'm going to go to the next page. So C is going to be how to find domain and range. So you might want to write this down because the rest of the other birds, you do have to still find the domain and range. So domain is the set of all x values from where the graph starts to where it ends. So domain is x value. So you are looking at it from the left side to the right side. And the rule is that smallest number goes first and biggest number goes second. Always write smallest number first and biggest number second. So let's go ahead and find the domain of our graph, which I'm going to scroll up. Doesn't have to be perfect again. As long as you know your x-intercepts and your height, you're good. So we have 6, 26, maximum height, 22. So middle of the graph, somewhere right here. Okay, here's our graph. We have to read it from left to right, smallest number to biggest number. So I can see that on my left side on the x-axis, remember, domain is the set of all x values. So I can see that it starts here and it ends right here. So your domain is from 6 to 26. So domain is from 6 to 26, and we use brackets because it's closed circle. One way I like to remember domain is using smiley faces. If you have less than or equal to, greater than or equal to, and your graph has a closed circle, then you use brackets. If you have less than or greater than an open circle on the graph, you use parentheses. In this case, our x-intercepts are closed circles, so we use brackets. And then another way, if you want to draw it out, your graph starts at 6, ends at 26, the x values. So that's domain. Go ahead and make this smaller so we have room for the range. Okay, going over range now. Going back to domain, this is question number 6. So you can already, once you find your domain, you can go back to your slide and edit that. Let's go ahead and talk about range. So range is the set of all y values. One way I tell my students to remember this is if you're looking at the smallest number, you want to look at the down where it starts and then work your way up. Same thing applies. Smallest number goes first. Biggest number goes second. So let's go ahead and draw a graph again. $22, 6, and then we have 26. Okay, range, looking at the y values. So we're looking at the y-axis right here. I'm going to go ahead and highlight. So we're only looking at the y-axis, ignore the x-axis. I can see that this is 0. You can see that our graph starts at 0, so down, going all the way up, ending at 22. So 0, 22, this is where it starts, where it ends. Both of them are closed, so we are going to use brackets for range. So we can see that our graph is starting from 0 to all the way to 22. So you can go ahead and answer this question on your slide for your problem. And this would be question number 7 now. So this is domain and range. It helps to annotate and use highlighter because I know we confuse domain and range all the time. Alrighty, I'm gonna go to another slide. So D, now we need to find our A value. So how to find your equation. So step number 1, we are going to find the A value using x-intercepts and vertex point. So we said that our x-intercepts are points 6, 0 and points 26, 0, and then our vertex point is 16, 22. So 16, 22. Going back to semester 1, we remember the factored form. If we don't remember factored form, here's a little refresher. Factored form, we're able to use it when we're given the x-intercepts. So it's A, the value of A, parentheses, x minus a number. We don't know that number. Parentheses, x minus a number. Again, we don't know those numbers. So because we know our x-intercepts, we can go ahead and set up our equation. So we want y equals A. We don't know that. These numbers are your x-intercepts right here. So because 6 is positive, we got to do negative. Second x-intercept, 26 is positive, so then we are going to do minus 26. Now, our y value, we're going to take it from our vertex, so we're going to replace that y with 22. And this is our setup using the factored form. And then since we know x is 16 from our vertex, we can continue and plug in 16 for all the x's, because that's what x equals according to your vertex point. Notice how I labeled it in pink, x and y. 16 minus 26. All right, let's get our calculator if you need to use a calculator. So 16 minus 6 is 10. So let's go ahead and calculate that. 10. 16 minus 26 is going to give you a negative number, which is negative 10. Negative 10 times positive 10 is negative 100. Since we want a by itself, so a is right here, we need to get rid of that negative 100. When a is right there next to negative 100 with parentheses, it means multiplication. So the inverse operation of multiplication is division. So we got to divide both sides by 100. Negative 100 over negative 100 is just 1. We could kind of cancel that out. So our a equals negative 22 100. And I don't believe that simplifies. If it does, then simplify it. So let's try it. I believe we can simplify this by dividing numerator and denominator by 100. So 22 divided by 2 is 11. Don't forget your negative. 100 divided by 2 is 50. So our simplified answer for A is negative over 50. So this is our A. We're not done yet. We still have to plug in A into the equation we wrote. So plug in A into factored form. So y equals A, which is negative 11 over 50. We got our x-intercepts, which is x minus 6, parentheses, x minus 26. You do not have to input the x-intercepts or the y-intercept anymore. Or sorry, your vertex point, because we want the equation. So our final answer for the equation is y equals negative 11 over 50, parentheses, x minus 6, parentheses, x minus 26. This is your factor form equation. So that's what you are going to type in for question number 8. This is your final equation for question number 8. Now, if your fraction does not simplify, mine did because it's a multiple of 2, the numerator and denominator. If it does not simplify it, then you go into plug in A into your factor form equation. All right, so this is literally questions 1 through 8. I walked you through it, but it's a different example. So go watch the next video on how I plug in this equation into Desmos.com. take a screenshot. And I don't want the whole screen. I don't want your whole screen Chromebook. I only want the graph so that you can drag the red bird to the highest point. Alright, so hopefully this video helped. Now you guys actually need to work out your question, which is totally different than mine, but work it out in a separate sheet of paper and then go back to your Google Slides and edit the information. So literally what I just did is what I expect from each and every one of you. The next video is going to show you how I use my equation, type it in Desmos, and then how to take a screenshot and insert it in your Google Slides. Alright, I will see you guys in the next video. Hopefully this helped. If you have any more questions, then just email me, please.